Spoiler alert. You're listening to the Comics Online Podcast. Season 19. Episode 6. 1983. Broadcast live from FXBG Public Radio June 24, 2019. This episode, Kevin and Troy David time travel to 1983 to chronicle the best of that year's pop culture. Topics include comics, music, movies, TV, and games. Will the Time Lords make it back to the present day? Will they even make it to 1984? Red Group, Green Group, Gold Group, all fight or follow me, as we traverse the 1980s for everything geek pop culture.
Converting earthly language into thrust. As you kneel before Isaiah, legend is elders turn to dust. Podcasting from the future like your time was dead and gone. And we rock the best site like comicsonline.com. Level 12 cybernetics, vibranium power acts. You communicate with snail mail while we wireless adapt. We are more than ECI as we descend to blow your spot. You're a copy of better tech like your name was GoBots. You hoping for iTunes but little noob, you in the danger zone. We're all the best leaders like Serpentor on his throne. Written by Stan the Man, don't you ever try to serve thee. Nougat of this book like we were drawn by Jack Kirby. Hunger like Sinistar, consumer culture then Galactus. Final Fantasy domination with our super geeky tactics. From the days of Marconi to bumping loud in Bespin City. You can hear us on every radio, stolen in Vice City. From leaping tall buildings to going off like gamma bombs. Switch your internet browser to comicsonline.com.
Hello again, and welcome to the Comics Online Podcast, Season 19, Episode 6. I'm your host, Kevin Gozwana. With me today, as usual, is my co-host, Troy David Phillips. Hey, everyone. This is where you applaud. This is where you applaud. And, of course, this is, once again, our almanac version of the show. We are going to time travel back to 1983, as our robot Alex has told you. And 1983 is a kind of a big year for geek pop culture.
Yeah, it is.
We've got a lot. Like I say, we've got movies, we've got TV, we've got games, we've got comic books because Troy David is here, and
yeah.
We're gonna give a lot of time to comic books. Let me tell you.
So now this is, as Kevin pointed out, it's a big year. More than just a big year in the world around us. Bear in mind, in 1983, so I'm 17, looking into my senior year and about to turn 18. That's going to be 1984. Kevin, 1983 was what for you?
I was 10, Troy.
Wow. So we come at this year from two very different perspectives, but interestingly enough, though, I think we have a great many things in common other than age. So so there we go.
So there we go.
This is the viewpoint of pop culture from a 17-year-old actually digesting it at the time.
And from a 10-year-old actually digesting it at a time. And of course, from each of our lifetimes, looking back at these different media, from a couple of years into the future as we grew older, going back and revisiting these comics and movies and TV and games and music. But what do we want to start out with here? Movies.
Actually, first, we want to stop and we want to say hello to our biggest fan, Nicolette.
Nicolette's here. Oh, Nicolette's the best. And George Uno is here on the old Instagrams. Hi, George.
So I'm throwing peace and love at all y'all. It's a very misshapen heart, but there's a lot of love in that misshapen heart.
Hi, Nicolette. Yeah, she's was her birthday yesterday? So happy birthday.
Yeah. I'd already
she is such a big fan that we know her birthday.
Yes, indeed. Delightful lady is that. So movies. Kevin and I, like I said, I was 17. This would have been about the time that I was going to movies with my hoodlum teenager friends, while Kevin was more than likely getting his parents to drop him off at the theater, unless, of course, they were sitting with him the whole time.
Mostly.
Mostly sitting with him the whole time. So, I would try to get girls to go to the movies with me. And truth, didn't have a whole lot of luck there. Wasn't completely, not completely unsuccessful, but I'm not going to brag about being a high school junior ladies man, because I wasn't.
Troy David, much like myself, was a late bloomer when it comes to being a ladies' man. It took us, it took us some time. We didn't jump into it quite so.
I'll let
so
you know
young.
when I get there.
Listen, Troy, all the ladies love you, and I think you need to recognize that. Just ask Nicolette, because she will tell you. She'll be like, all those customers love you. Troy, of course, you may recognize, those of you who are local to Northern Virginia will recognize Troy. Isn't that Troy who does the top 5 every week with Kevin?
Yes. So here we are, Flashback Comics. We're going to do that tomorrow. We're going to do a top 5 show. I've been reading some comics from the last couple of weeks, trying very hard to get caught up. Preparing for the show takes so much time. I mean, there's so much knowledge to convey, and we want to line things up and, kind of fact check and double check and make sure we're telling you guys accurate infos. So Kevin here has prepped 1983 in movies. Now, this is a little ironic, but Kevin is a movie guy. Kevin definitely is my go-to for suggestions on movies and film. And while I certainly saw a lot of these things, 1983 had some good things and some not very good things, and we're gonna jump right on in there.
So you want to start with let's see where we start. Well, let me just paint the picture before we get into the geek pop culture things. Let me paint the picture of the rest of the world. 1983 brought us comedy, a lot of things like Bill Cosby himself.
Yes.
Dad is great. He gives us the chocolate cake. Unfortunately, what we didn't know is there was something in the chocolate cake.
Eggs.
A little bit more than that, Bill.
Unfortunately, but
and also A Christmas Story, which Comics Online has covered a bazillion times because it's one of our favorite movies. We've got a couple of awesome comedies, Dr. Detroit and Trading Places, both with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy, obviously.
Trading Places is one of those movies that I could probably watch once a year, every year, without fail.
Oh yeah, that's good stuff. And then we can go into horror. We could start with. Who got a lot of play in 1983, who just really blew up on the big screen, and that's Stephen King. When we could start with Cujo.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. Cujo.
That was a frightening movie for me. It was a little bit too real because as a kid I would go to scary movies, as I would call them. I would go to horror movies with my parents. And that, and normally it would just be like whatever, a slasher or a monster, big deal. But no, a dog is something in real life that, okay, look, when I was second grade, so just like a year or two before this, I got bitten on the butt by a big scary dog in the neighborhood, and so Cujo to me was a little bit too close to home.
It's funny because after Cujo, after seeing this film, I don't recall that I actually saw it in 1983. I might have actually seen this on home box office the following year or even the year after that. But it was after seeing that I lost a lot of my fear of dogs.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I was never terrified of dogs, and my grandmother had dogs, and so I'd been around dogs, but living in the city, not as much. But I think I went through a brief period where I was a little nervous around bigger dogs, big barky dogs. But after this movie, I lost a lot of that fear and apprehension.
All right. Also, when it comes to horror, we had The Dead Zone. Also, Stephen King. We had The Keep, which was a book that I read around that time. You remember that?
I loved it. Jürgen Prochnow. I loved that movie.
We had Something Wicked This Way Comes. And we had something that kind of was on the border of horror and sci-fi, which was Twilight Zone the movie.
Yeah.
And that, along with Stephen King's previous thing in 1982, Creepshow, that was a wonderful addition. I thought I had something up for Twilight Zone, but I must have missed it. Anyway, that was.
Wasn't Christine in here somewhere?
I don't believe Christine was 83, as far as I know. I mean, I can go and check my notes.
Yeah, and this is going back to those fact checking things. But Christine jumped into my mind for some reason. Maybe it's just the Stephen King connection.
Yeah, could be. In any case, we had a bunch of other things as well. We had classics like The Outsiders and Pirates of Penzance is kind of the opposite of ends of sort of almost plays. We had more comedies like Monty Python's The Meaning of Life.
Yes.
And National Lampoon's Vacation. And Risky Business, featuring Rebecca De Mornay, which we can see now as Patsy Walker's mom in seasons at least 2 and 3 of Jessica Jones on Netflix.
Oh my goodness!
And she was amazing then, and ladies aged well. So good on you. What else do we have? Octopussy, which you mentioned last week.
Yeah. So the James Bond films, we have on the one end we have Octopussy, on the other end we have Never Say Never Again. Mm-hmm. Now, I had been having some social time with friends of mine, and we got into an argument about who was the better Bond, Roger Moore or Sean Connery, and I did a quick fact check, and I said, hey, look, whether you like Roger Moore, whether you like Sean Connery, within one calendar year, a movie came out from each one, and Roger Moore's movie made more money.
Well, there you are.
I'm sure Sean Connery doesn't like hearing that, but sorry, Mr. Connery, that is the truth.
That's just the way it goes sometimes. Now, when it comes to Troy pointed out something to me before we get to the top big guns here. Troy pointed out to me Extro. What? Just explain to me what this movie was and why you cared and why anybody should watch it in 2019.
So, Extro is this horrible. Yes, some extraterrestrials aren't friendly. This movie came out after E.T., obviously, and it is the polar opposite of E.T. For one thing, E.T. is actually good, and for another thing, this movie has more of a horror vibe to it.
Like not evil or not bad or both.
Both. I mean, these aliens come to Earth, and they're really creepy and rapey, and their embryos grow full-sized within you pretty quickly. Giving birth to the alien hybrid spawn will kill a woman, and they're oh my God, they're horrific. They're terrifying, except the movie isn't executed very well. I would say that you need to see it one time just to know. You need to see it once, but this is one of those movies that, probably has low double digits on Rotten Tomatoes.
Gotcha. All right. So getting a little further along in our list here, we also have a couple of rather important items. We have Krull, which I mean, it's pretty cheesy fantasy, but for boys of our age, I mean, it was just amazing. Like, they've got this weapon that's like a boomerang, and it's magical, and it's got 5 blades, and that's amazing. It didn't make any sense.
It was like a
wonderful
giant throwing star that came back to your hand after you threw it, and it was a giant floating castle, and the bad guys were like robots with little creatures in their heads, and it had a young Liam Neeson.
Now, did he play one of the centaurs?
No.
I've heard about Liam Neeson.
He was actually one of the bandits that joined the party, and many of those characters were killed, obviously, before the film was over. It spawned a video game. I sunk many quarters into that video game. I have a copy of Krull on Blu-ray today, and it was a Christmas gift, and I might actually have to watch this movie again fairly soon.
This was the one with the centaurs, though, right? That
No, this one had Cyclops and
which was the one with the centaurs that knew when you would die?
No, that was the Cyclops that knew your future.
Was that it?
Yes,
I thought
that was it. There was
centaurs.
one
It's been
Cyclops.
so long.
And they were cursed to know when they were going to die. They would know their fate and they couldn't escape it. And so our Cyclops bravely rushed and sacrificed his life and helped save the day. Corwin was able to win his lady. They overcame the beast, freed the land, and yon.
Okay. So number one for the year would be, of course, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, hard to argue against this one as, genre importance, pop culture importance, the end of the trilogy that started so many things. I mean, this is, I'm going to focus as much as possible on 1983 here, but I got to say, Star Wars as a sci-fi franchise, Star Wars is important to science fiction. It is the first of the big budget blockbusters, and it is not post-apocalyptic, and it is not cautionary. It's not like Omega Man, or it's not like 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it's not like Logan's Run or Planet of the Apes or other science fictions. This goes back to the spirit of Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers and fairy tales in space, laser swords, wizard knights with wisdom, and then a lovable rogue like Han Solo, who starts out on the darker edge of your side. He is at best an anti-hero, but he has a character arc and his character grows. Yes, Han shot first. He totally blew Greedo in half. And I don't think he had much of a choice. I think it was smart for him to do that. But at the end of things, he comes back to help his friend Luke Skywalker. That is now officially a friend of his. He comes back to help Luke destroy the Death Star, and he throws in with the rebels. And then, Empire Strikes Back. He's with us. Yeah, there's a bounty hunter chasing after me. There's a price on my head. But you know what? I'm not going to abandon Princess Leia. I'm not going to abandon this cause altogether. And he gets frozen in carbonite for it. And Return of the Jedi, Luke brings it back and saves Han this time. And then the two of them go off together to Endor, the Forest Moon.
And party with the little murder bears.
The Ewoks. They were called Ewoks.
That's the local tongue means murder bear. Anyway, fantastic movie. And then beyond that, we might as well just go and roll straight into video games.
Whoa.
What?
Because 1983 gave us something good and important and yet not very good.
And what was that?
That was the third installment in the Christopher Reeve Superman.
Oh, I forgot about
Superman.
How did I miss
3.
this? It was not in my bigger list for some reason.
So Superman 3. Here we have Superman, Christopher Reeve reprising the role. A significantly reduced part for Margot Kidder as Lois Lane. She's really not in this film at all, and I believe that was some disagreement she was having with the Salkins. Instead, her character was mostly replaced with Lana Lang, and Superman revisiting his lady love from Smallville.
And that was Annette O'Toole?
Yes. So
later to become Mrs. Kent in Smallville.
Yeah. So we have Richard Pryor as Gus Gorman, the computer genius, and most of this film is just not good. Christopher Reeve does the absolute best job. He does what he can with this script, and he tries not to look ridiculous doing it. And kudos to that man and his acting prowess. He managed to make the Superman costume not look ridiculous on a human being. The battle where he's separated, where he's like Dark Superman and Clark Kent, and they battle each other.
Was that this?
That was
this
the
fourth one. Okay.
No. That's Nuclear Man is the fourth one.
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
talk about that in its proper time. Thank God we have a couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
But so there it is, Superman 3. If you've never seen it, you need to see it at least once. And then after you see it, you may wrestle with gouging your own eyes out.
You might, or you might not. It depends. That's on you. So when it comes to video games in 1983, one of the big things to come out in the aside from the video game award, the arcade awards, where Tron from 1982 won best video or best arcade game, that is to say, and Galaxian, which was my favorite at the time, best standalone game. But we had the Star Wars arcade game, and this is that vector-based game.
Yeah.
And here's some video for it for those of you who can see the video. Sorry if you're on a different thing where you can't right now, but
join us on the Flashback Comics Facebook page. I'm
listen,
showing the videos.
Mister, none of that. Anyway, that was a fantastic game, for its time. Not the prettiest, but it was, because of it. It was vector based. It was able to be a heck of a lot faster, I felt like. We had a bunch of sequels, like Pac-Man Jr. One of the biggest deals that I should put up a thing, but I don't have. I didn't grab one. But we had Dragon's Lair as one of the first, or actually the third Laserdisc video game, which was fantastic. And then I suppose I should scroll over here, maybe, if I have it still. Did I throw it out? Oh, here we go. Also to come out in 1983, Spy Hunter, which offered this lovely audio, which of course we've heard under a lot of things over the years.
Yeah, so that that sort of modified Peter Gunn theme, as executed by a great many people. One of my favorite versions of the Peter Gunn theme is actually done by the Art of Noise. I'll play that for you sometime.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got we had other sequels. Pole Position 2. We had the very first Punch-Out. If you remember.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, your Pole Position, there was a Saturday morning cartoon built around that video game.
They were trying to wrap Saturday morning cartoons around anything they could.
Remember
at the time.
Pac-Man had a Saturday cartoon also?
Oh, yeah. There were multiple Donkey Kong ones.
Oh,
my goodness. And then we had a Nintendo release the Famicom, the family computer, which of course you can still get today sometimes in secondhand stores in Japan. And there were a surprisingly decent amount of games for it, and this is the predecessor to the Nintendo Entertainment System.
You want to swing through Japan tomorrow on the way to work, pick one up, and then drop back over?
I tell you what, you pick me up in the old Quinjet, and we'll go.
Don't think I wouldn't.
Okay. Troy can't even drive a car, much less a Quinjet.
I will have you know that I could do either of these two things.
I sort of believe you. So that's all I wanted to talk about in 1983 in video gaming. Troy, what's next?
So, Kevin and I, I don't know where you were at with album buying at the time.
Oh, my goodness.
I was actually, at this stage, I was buying a lot of music on cassette because I didn't own a turntable at this point in time. But, one of, I'm just going to shoot through some of the albums that I've got there. And the Eurythmics, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, oh my God, Annie Lennox had such a look to her. It's just absolutely amazing. I think our guy's gonna toss up our image. There she is.
There we go.
Annie Lennox. Oh my God, I was so smitten with her. Her voice, her look, her stage presence. And then, as time went on, I also got to appreciate the production skill of Dave Stewart, the other half of the Eurythmics. And, he was musically quite talented. Let's not forget that in Germany, now, of course, the song would be bigger in the States later, but Nina had 99 Luftballons, or 99 red balloons. A Luftballon, translated from German, would be an air balloon. If you wanted that balloon to be red, it would actually be rot. My German is not good, but it's that good. So one thing that you'll notice about 1983 is a strong presence of new wave, but let us not inconsider the presence of strong heavy metal. 1983, Def Leppard gave us the album Pyromania. And so, while on the one hand there was an awful lot of, a lot of like the new wave, the age of the new romantics. At the same time, we were seeing this long hair, heavy metal type stuff. There is our band Def Leppard. But then, we have to shift the stage to Echo and the Bunnymen. Their album Porcupine was out. And, Echo and the Bunnymen, known for a great many things, but there it is. Look at that album. Look at I just want to be in that snow. Kilroy Was Here was written on so many walls and things in World War II, but it was written on an album cover by a band called Styx. And that was Mr. Roboto was the big song off of that. But yeah, Kilroy Was Here. Did you have that album?
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Oh, I did. Well, you know what? I think I was first. Was there? I think there was a live version of it that that came out.
Not of that one. I think the one you're thinking of is Rockin' the Paradise.
Anyway, but yes, I was certainly very, very familiar with this album as well.
Yeah, I mean, we were all singing that song, right?
For sure.
So also there were, and I mentioned the new wave, the new romantics. We saw things like Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark with their album Dazzle Ships, Spandau Ballet with their album True. But then we also had rockers that were very much staying relevant to the time. There were bands like Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd doing The Final Cut. In the background here, Kevin's playing Spandau Ballet's True, but Pink Floyd, The Final Cut, was, among other things, the final album with Roger Waters and Dave Gilmour and company, with that iteration of the band. They would break up, and then David Gilmour would reform the band without Roger Waters. Roger Waters would go on as a solo. Dave Gilmour also had a solo album, but The Final Cut was known for the single Not Now, John. Not Now, John had both a radio edit and an uncensored edit because
This is my favorite song. Wait, this one. Is it this one? It feels like it's a. The Final Cut always felt like it was a sequel to
The Wall.
The Wall, yeah.
Yeah, the post-war dream.
Yeah.
So you might actually listen to not only this song, but also Two Suns in the Sunset. Your Possible Past was another good one. And Paranoid Eyes. All excellent songs. And then Pink Floyd would go on to other things. We'd also have, from this time period, ZZ Top and the album Eliminator. And Eliminator, I mean, that album was just so much fun. There is that boss-looking car staring you in the face. We remember the song Legs. We remember Sharp Dressed Man.
Gee, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Kevin's got the video going over here, and it's
There we are.
got my attention, all kinds of diverted. But lots of good things came off of ZZ Top's Eliminator. And let's not forget that also we got the Tubes, their album Inside Outside. Now the Tubes on this album gave us She's a Beauty. That was an excellent piece. Besides for the Tubes, we had, now this was of a special note to me, and special importance to me, was REM with Murmur. Now, REM had already had an EP called Chronic Town, but Murmur was their first widespread album release. Among other things, had the song Radio Free Europe, Pilgrimage, talk about the Passion, We Walk, West of the Fields, many good songs. And I began a fascination with that band that just lasted, over a decade. One big song. Oh, yeah, Kevin's got Radio Free Europe playing in the background. I love this album. I really, truly do. Also, this is the year of David Bowie and Let's Dance. There's that image of Bowie, like, in the boxing shorts with the gloves on, and he looks like he's ready to rumble. Let's Dance, ironically, was Bowie's commercial best album, and it was the album that he liked the least. There were other pieces that he felt that he had done better on artistically. This was not one of them, but it was the album that we loved, and we pumped our money into it. So I hope that told David Bowie something in life. Another commercially successful album at this time was Men at Work with the album Cargo. Remember the songs Who Can It Be Now? Yeah, that's Kev's bringing up my sound files there. We were all, bopping our heads, tapping our feet, dancing along to Cargo. And that wasn't the only thing. Just a little bit after this album was the Talking Heads, Speaking in Tongues. Speaking in Tongues from Talking Heads, among other things, had the song Burning Down the House on it. And Burning Down the House, that was one of my favorites. We also had the Kinks, State of Confusion. Remember the single "Come Dancin'"?
Oh yeah.
That was, and I think "Don't Forget to Dance" is also on that album. Big one. And again, talking about finality, is the Police's final studio album together before a lengthy hiatus, was the album Synchronicity. And Synchronicity just turned out such major pieces from the Police. You had Synchronicity Part 1, Synchronicity Part 2, Wrapped Around Your Finger, oh my God. And then there were lesser lights on this album too. There were songs like Mrs. Grodenko and Mother. There were songs on here, big and small, that the candle setup in that video, Wrapped Around Your Finger. I just like that image of Sting dancing around, waving his arms while surrounded in a labyrinth of candles. I'm like, wow, I could just imagine if you had a spasm, if you tripped, if you stumbled, knock one of these things over and you've just ruined a whole day of shooting. So let's see, going forward here, Robert Plant gave us his second solo album. Robert Plant had already done Pictures at 11. We talked about that one back in 1982. Well, 1983, we had The Principles of Moment. We had Other Arms on this album, but my favorite song was actually the song In the Mood. That was such a great tune. Yeah, Kev's playing the sound file in there. So yeah, I'm a little envious of you guys on YouTube. You're getting the sound files that the Facebookers aren't getting, but at least they're getting the album jackets.
There you go.
So, hey Kevin, do you know
sir.
what happens in a big country?
I think dreams stay with you.
Yes, they do. Like a lover's call from the mountainside. Stay alive. And that was Big Country, The Crossing. But not only did that album have In a Big Country on it, but it also had the song Fields of Fire. 400 miles of Fields of Fire. That song is the best song on that album. But there's a bunch of good stuff on there, so treat yourself to Big Country, The Crossing. Also, treat yourself to Madonna. Now, of course, Kevin, earlier, before we started the show, Kevin was quoting from Lucky Star, but the song that I fell in love with off of Madonna's album here was Borderline. I couldn't stop jamming to that song for some reason. And I got to give mad credit to Madonna. She was brilliant with her manipulation of the fashion. She would start a trend and then she would jump off of that trend before it ran down, and she would start a whole nother trend. You couldn't keep up with her. There were times when we wondered if she was able to keep up with herself. I mean, it was like, this woman is beyond intelligent.
She was quite amazing, and continues to be even today.
Yeah. So now, that was Madonna on the more pop dance side. But do you know who had her? I think it's her third studio album, but it's only her second album with the Black Hearts as her band. Is Joan Jett and the Black Hearts? This is the album. It's actually called Album.
Those jerks. That's not funny.
And yeah. So now this is not the actual playlist. I
was
grabbed
gonna say,
the
that
image.
can't be it.
Yeah, no, that wasn't the playlist from the album. But this album had "Losing Friends."
Does it have this one? No.
No. "Hate Myself for Loving You" is much later.
Okay.
But it also has the French song. It has her cover of "Everyday People." A bunch of good stuff on Joan Jett's album. Let's not, again, I talk about rockers trying to stay relevant. Old guard guys still kicking albums out. Jackson Browne with "Lawyers in Love." Now, Jackson Browne is the guy that gave us "Running on Empty," Boulevard, and others, "Doctor My Eyes." So here is Jackson Browne with "Lawyers in Love." This song is so not like him, yet all the same, I enjoyed it, and I also enjoyed the video. I was, listened to the song as much as anybody else did, I'm sure. Another band staying relevant at this time, kicking out the jams, was AC/DC with "Flick of the Switch."
Yeah.
There's our guys, Brian Johnson and Angus Young. They just continued to rock and roll. You know, we had transitioned from "Highway to Hell" to "Back in Black," and so we had transitioned, from Bon Scott to Brian Johnson. And yet they just kept rock and rolling. They, if we wanted blood, we got it. We got High Voltage. We got all that stuff, right? So, "Flick of the Switch." If I remember correctly, this album also has "Bedlam in Belgium," that Angus Young, man, he could just rock it. There's the album cover. I saw it in a record store and it was like, as soon as it's payday, I'm coming back here to get that. Let's title albums right there. Rat. Again, back with the hair metal bands. We're really, there's that provocative album. Those aren't actually rats; those are mice, I believe. I have never heard a behind the scenes story about the model that posed for those things. Maybe she was weirded out, maybe she wasn't. But This is that time period, though, where we have we have hardcore heavy metal, big hair bands, we have new wave, the post-punk move still, we have the age of the new romantics, and then we have a continued invasion from across the Atlantic, because we had UB40 with Labor of Love. And of course, if I said, Labor of Love, most people would scratch their heads. But if I said UB40 and then said Red, Red Wine, now you know what I'm talking about, right? I personally like UB40's music. That album though, and that song, Red, Red Wine, it just sticks in your mind. The video sticks in your mind. Now, I'm going to jump back over to our side here. Detroit Rock City, Kevin. You ready for this?
What?
Kiss. Lick It Up. The album was Lick It Up. But interestingly enough, when you see this album cover, you think Kiss, and you're thinking that 1970s glam makeup band. And in fact...
this is when they dropped the makeup. This is
when they dropped the makeup. Look at them. That's still very much Gene Simmons. But this was, new look, but hard driving sound from Kiss. So not much had changed there.
You can watch Comics Online's interview with Paul Stanley and the Tongue Man himself from a couple years ago on our YouTube.
So here's another one for you. Talking about hard driving song, Genesis. On their album Genesis, they had that song, that Mama. Remember that one? Really driven heavily by Phil Collins there, but
Okay.
Mama just, I would think of Genesis, and
You
I
got a
would,
tribute band.
and like I would,
Imagine.
I would think of songs that had been done by Genesis when Peter Gabriel was still with the band. Their sound really changed a lot in the absence of Peter Gabriel. Also, the Motels. We had the Motels with their album Little Robbers. Suddenly last summer, the title track Little Robbers, if you've never listened to it, the title track is actually pretty cool. Straight into the Heartland. There's some good stuff on this album. Going into a young woman who was so unusual was Cyndi Lauper. 1983, we saw Cyndi Lauper, and She's So Unusual. Girls Just Want to Have Fun. She Bop. Money Changes Everything. Yeah. Sorry, Cyndi, you got that phone upside down there. Y'all know what I'm talking about. There were unusual bands like with their album Soul Mining in 1983. The big one from Soul Mining was actually the song This Is the Day. You might not remember This Is the Day off the top of your head, but if you were watching the 1990s movie Empire Records, Kevin and I were talking about this before.
Oh, right.
Empire Records, towards the end, when we're partying on the roof, one of the dance songs is actually This Is the Day. That is one of the songs it plays. The Rolling Stones, again, we're talking about old guard rockers still knocking albums out, and the Rolling Stones are not much different from others. There they are, keeping the controversy moving. Undercover, featuring Undercover in the Night. Thank you. Yeah, that Mick Jagger. Not exactly a newcomer to hard rock, with a touch of glam and a touch of post-punk, was Billy Idol. And this, his second solo album, previously had been with the band Generation X. Billy Idol gave us Rebel Yell. And so in the midnight hour, she cried more, more, more.
Like she does.
Like she does. And so Billy Idol just kept cranking out the hits and cranking out the albums because she cried more, more, more. So, what else there, Kev?
Wendell's here. Wubby Bubberly is on here. All right.
Yeah. So, do you remember we kept talking about Duran Duran? The self-titled album Duran Duran, the album Rio. All right, well, here they are one more time. This time it's Seven and the Ragged Tiger.
Oh my goodness. Hold
yes.
on. Let me pause the Billy Idol here and let's go right over to
The Reflex.
The Reflex. And by the way, if you were listening on the Flashback Facebook, or you're listening on the Instagram, you're like, there's no songs. It's not routed through this. This is on my phone. I apologize. Complain to Instagram. Sorry.
Hey, but you know what else? So 1983. This is not her debut album by any stretch of the imagination, but was Susie and the Banshees.
I know. What's the big one from that one? Because I remember her from other albums entirely.
Okay, so Susie and the Banshees and Nocturne. And I'm trying to remember the playlist from off this album. I have it. Why can't I think of the tunes?
Sorry, I didn't mean to mess you up here.
Yeah. This was what's pull that playlist up there.
Nocturne.
Like that's not slow drive.
Voodoo Dolly, pulled the bits. No, this is not even. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, and I'm going to close, though. Kevin had played the song Reflex by Duran Duran from Seven and the Ragged Tiger, which also gave his Union to the Snake.
Yeah.
But the Reflex was also the name of a band, and they gave us the album The Politics of Dancing. Now, Many will remember the song "The Politics of Dancing," the politics of feeling good. Yes, I'm going to tell you, as somebody who bought the album and listened to the entire album beginning to end, there are at least 4 songs on that album so superior to The Politics of Dancing. You listen to The Politics of Dancing and you might actually like the song. Okay, great. Well, you want to listen to the hit line. You want to listen to Keep in Touch. There are other songs on this album. Like once you start listening, you'll be like, wow, why have I not heard some of these other things? And that's what I got for 1980s music.
Well, Troy, let me just drop a couple extra that are important to me.
Okay. Yeah.
I've got to go with Love Cats
By The Cure.
by The Cure, and of course
Robert Smith and The Cure.
Yeah. And then of course we had also what hadn't come out yet was Thriller, right? Mm-hmm. But it did come out.
Billie
This came
Jean.
out. The single was released in 1983, and this is along with Madonna, Michael Jackson was pop music in the 80s.
Oh, heck yeah. Well, let us not forget, though, right on the plateau with those two would have been Prince.
Certainly, without question. But I want to say that being as though he was such a musician as well as vocalist, I kind of want to put him in more of a rock category, even though obviously he's very pop too.
Well, yeah, and then of course, Purple Rain is not here yet, but man, it's going to be a game-changing album when we talk about it.
For sure. So there, and this was this got a lot of play from 1983, and let's face it.
Oh yeah, heavily rotated.
Going forward after that. So that was that. Let me close some of these windows so I can forget about 1983, or at least those components of it. Why do I have the Black Hood open?
Well, we're going to talk about comics now. The Black
Are we?
Hood.
Is it time for comics, Troy?
Comics, man, comics. I mean, look at the time, Kevin. Our show is getting away from us here. So much to talk about here. So, 1983, a pair of young men, Eastman and Laird, they found our Mirage Studios.
I know those guys.
Yeah. So now, 1983 is not the year that they released Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
No.
but this is when they found Mirage Studios that would give us the TMNT. They're certainly young, talented artists that grew as time went on. They continued to improve their craft with every issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, eventually the Fugitoid. They had their shot, and they took it, and they made the most out of their opportunities. So 1983 is both a year. Yeah, there. Look at that. Eastman and Laird. Look at that. 1983 is a year of endings and beginnings. Doors close and doors open up again. What kind of doors close? Well, let's start with Charlton Comics. Charlton Comics, with issue 153, they end their long-running Western, Billy the Kid. Also, Marvel Comics ends. Now there's Billy, and that's Billy going out the door there. Marvel ended Crazy Magazine with issue number 94. DC Comics ended their long-running Brave and the Bold. The Batman team-up book, Brave and the Bold, ended with issue number 200. But number 200 gave us our first look at Batman and the Outsiders. DC also ended the long-running Adventure Comics with issue 503. Adventure Comics had been published almost continuously since 1938 or 1939, I believe. It was close to, but not quite, with Action.
Final issue number 500.
Yeah, well, 503. That was, but I grabbed that 500 because it was a nice looking cover.
Didn't Adventure come back a little bit?
Well, they would periodically bring Adventure back in one incarnation or another, but usually very short-lived.
Because we had Superman in Adventure Comics back in the mid '90s, right?
No, you're thinking of the Adventures of Superman. When John Byrne took over, they did that split. We'll get that in 1985, 1986.
Okay.
House of Mystery ended with issue 321. Also, DC ended the Weird War Tales comic. There were beginnings and endings, actually, that came from... Now, this is one of the reasons you had the Black Hood up there. So, Archie Comics had gone back to being a private-owned company. They had been publicly traded previously, but that ended. They went back to being private, and they launched their own imprint, the Red Circle imprint, and that was where they put their superhero titles, like The Mighty Crusaders, which was new in 1983, The Flyman, or simply The Fly, which also, the titles and the characters are Golden Age and Silver Age, but this is the first time they had been seen in new stories with new art in quite some time. There's The Fly. And his female sidekick, the Fly Girl. There is the Comet. Now, these things were supposed to run, the Comet that you see, Premier Collector Series, issue 1 of 6. As it turns out, the Comet only made it to 2 issues, and then it didn't go past that. The Black Hood was supposed to run longer, but it only made it to 3 issues. The Red Circle imprint, and there's Blue Ribbon Comics, also featuring the Fly. Simon, Kirby, and Williamson, classic Fly stories. Because what a lot of people didn't know was that Simon and Kirby had done this story about a teenager, had a magic ring that gave him insect powers.
Okay.
And then, wouldn't you know it, Stan Lee has Jack Kirby do the introductory art on a teenager who gets bitten by a spider and get spider powers.
I wonder if that had anything to do with the other.
Well, I would suspect that Stan Lee took an idea and ran it through Jack Kirby to refine that idea. But as it turns out, Steve Ditko became the artist that got the job on Spider-Man. Jack Kirby did the cover of Amazing Fantasy 15. So, as I said, that was the endings. The beginnings, however, we were going to see things not only like the short-lived Fly and Mighty Crusader and etc., but Batman and the Outsiders came from Brave and the Bold 200. We also, from the pages of Green Lantern, we got Omega Men #1. A touch of superhero with science fiction was Omega Men. These characters from the Vegan star system, we'd already been introduced to the Vegan star system in the pages of New Teen Titans. That was with Starfire and her sister from Tamaran. Well, deep in the Vegan system is this long-running civil war, the battle between the oppressed races of Vega and the Citadel and the Scions and so on. We also got to see some interesting things from independent comic companies, though. Not least of which was First Comics giving us John Sable Freelance. Here's an interesting kind of down-to-earth mercenary spy type character. Nothing extraordinary, no super abilities, etc. Somewhat with I want to say a James Bondish vibe to it.
Yeah.
Did you read John Sable?
I have got a few of them over the years, yeah.
Mike Grell doing the artwork, and John Sable was so
Excellent.
very good. We also had titles like American Flag from First Comics, but not to be inconsidered were the Justice Machine. Now, Noble Comics had ended their run of Justice Machine, and here, this outfit, Texas Comics, picks them up in 1983, right on the cover there. There is the one and only issue of the Justice Machine Annual. Now, what's ironic about this cover is you see the Thunder Agents in no particular order. That's Raven, No Man, Lightning, and Dynamo. And the back cover, the wraparound back cover, featured Bill Willingham's Elementals. That was the introduction of those characters. The Justice Machine themselves do not appear on the cover of their own comic. Texas Comics, however, very quickly folded, and an outfit named Kamiko. Remember, I talked about them last time in 1982, the Kamiko Primer with Grendel. Well, Kamiko picked up Willingham's Elementals, and they picked up the Justice Machine. The Thunder Agents would find another home, however. Do you remember the big spate of funny animal comics, the funny animal characters that came out
Captain
in the
Carrot
80s?
and his zoo crew.
Well, no, even
Peter
more.
Porker, the Spectacular Spider Ham.
I'm talking like Steve Galacci's Albedo.
Oh.
Albedo Anthropomorphics. Now, there we see the character Irma Felna from, I believe her storyline was referred to as the Command Review.
My storyline has been referred to as has a lot of albedo.
So there were essentially they were sci-fi stories, and all the characters were anthropomorphic, which is to say funny animals with human traits. And Steve Galacci's Albedo was high among those. Albedo would also it wasn't Albedo, it was Critters. Would introduce us to Usagi Yojimbo.
Oh, yeah.
That Stan Sakai's Usagi Yojimbo was actually pretty fantastic. But we also, now, the same artist that gave us Ra's al Ghul in Batman, the same artist that did those fantastic Superman and action covers, Neil Adams.
Neil Adams.
And Neil Adams gave us, of all things, in 1983, he gave us from Pacific Comics, Skate Man. I'm not making that up.
Do we have a picture of Skate Man?
As a matter of fact, we do.
With some quads rolling in there with Pacific Comics.
Yeah. So remember that this is before the development of inline skates. So we didn't have rollerblades.
Wow.
We actually used roller skates.
And the funny thing is, if it's Neil Adams drawing it, you're like, wow, I buy it. Oh, obviously he's kicking ass with some roller skates, and he's got like one of those hats with the built-in mullet.
I kind of feel like if I took this comic and I took it to Neil Adams and I asked him to please autograph it to Troy David, he might not actually charge me for that autograph.
He might not. Unfortunately, yeah, the man in the blue button up tends to be a little pricey, and he's no Walt Simonson. I mean, nobody is, but I'm just saying.
Well, Walt Simonson is.
Yeah,
We're going to talk
he's the only
about him
one.
before too long, too. Hey,
Yeah?
get this. Kev,
What? Tell me.
Capital Comics, a little company from Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
They are both a publisher and a distributor.
Mm-hmm.
And Capital Comics gives us Nexus.
Oh,
Steve Rude, Mike Barron.
Yeah.
They give us Nexus. They also gave us a book called The Badger.
Badger.
Oh my God!
That one? No, different
that
one.
one.
Oh, it's that
The Badger.
one.
Yes. So The Badger was done by Jeff Butler and Mike Barron. Mike Barron stayed on writing this book the entire time. Jeff Butler would leave and be replaced with Bill Reinhold. Bill Reinhold would eventually leave the book, and there was a succession of artists until they settled on a couple of fairly good teams, actually. Neil Hansen for a while, very briefly Tim Vigil, but Stephen Butler came onto the book. And Stephen Butler, I met him and Roland Mann, both of them exemplary gentlemen. He was such a good artist. I got to show you some of those Badgers I have.
All right.
And of course, Barron and Rude doing Nexus, and Capital Comics also published the first few issues of Whisper. Before all of these things, Capital got out of the publishing side and went hardcore into distributing, but all of those things
That didn't turn out so well.
Well, it did for a while until it didn't. I actually worked for the Capital City Warehouse.
Did you?
I did. So those things went to First Comics, but we shot through some of these things. Warp. So DC Comics acquired the interests of Charlton Comics.
Okay.
They picked up the characters, The Question and Captain Atom and the Blue Beetle.
I didn't realize that was so. I guess 1983 isn't recent anymore, but I didn't realize that was during
that span of time, that phase of your lifetime.
Yeah, I thought it was way earlier than that they picked that up.
Interestingly enough, Bill Black over at AC Comics, Americomics, they had done adventures of those Charlton characters, and then learned that they were not in the public domain, and so they ceased to do them. They cut that one pretty quick. We had Wonder Woman number 300. Wonder Woman 300 had this deep, lengthy story. I mean, this was beyond novel length story. Actually had Diana battling a dream creature, the manifestation of her fears and her self-doubt. She was assisted by the Simon and Kirby character, the Sandman. Not the Neil Gaiman Sandman character, that guy in the red and yellow suit. He made an appearance in this. Wonder Woman faked her own death so that she could marry Steve Trevor, only to learn that Steve Trevor was actually in love with Diana Prince, more so than her Wonder Woman identity.
And was at the end, is she just like, hello, same woman. What's your problem?
She kept her identity, but she undid her fake death, and Wonder Woman went on a few more issues to 325, and then Crisis on Infinite Earth happened. Bizarre Adventures. Marvel ended Bizarre Adventures with issue number 34. Remember that I Hate Holidays issue? Had the creepy looking skeleton in the Santa Claus outfit?
Yep.
All right, well, that book, the book that had been Marvel premiere that became Bizarre Adventures is done. Marvel ended that one of their magazine lines. We saw from DC, I'm just going to hit this triple threat real quick. We saw Legion of Superheroes 298. That had the preview of Amethyst of Gem World, was LSH 298.
And now we're seeing Gemworld.
We're seeing Gemworld back again. Exactly.
Feature prominently in the latest. What is it? The kid book, the teen book.
Young Justice.
Young Justice, which is fantastic, by the way. You should read it.
We also had Detective Comics 526 with Jason Todd making his debut as Robin.
Yeah.
And then the Batman, I think it was 357, is where he appears in the Batman title as Jason. And then we had Action Comics 544. Action 544 would actually feature the new battle armor for Lex Luthor, the green and purple battle armor, and it would be that new robot body for Brainiac.
All right.
That chilling image of Brainiac. We would see the end of Master of Kung Fu 125. We would end Marvel 2-in-1 with 100, but we get the Thing out of that. So, there it is. He walks away, and we don't see Shang-Chi again for several more years.
Yeah.
Not until Marvel Comics Presents, an 8-part story, and then after that, the Bleeding Black one-shot. We also get out of this Thor 337. We get the first appearance of Beta Ray Bill. Well, no, there's the Marvel 2-in-1 100.
There we go.
Thor 337, Beta Ray Bill.
That was an amazing one.
And we get that really good, remember Magic, Storm and Ileana Rasputin.
Yeah.
1983 is the number 1 issue of Storm and Ileana, number 1 in a 4-issue limited series. This is an era of limited series for Marvel, because not only this one, but also overlapping 1982 to 1983. Yep, there's the hook of the story. Yeah. Divided between Limbo and the real world, Ileana lives 7 years trapped in Limbo with Belasco, but for the X-Men, only seconds actually go by. They didn't realize what happened. We also, though, we get that Vision and Scarlet Witch story. Vision and Scarlet Witch, their first limited series.
The 4-issue one, not the 12-issue one.
Right. Yeah. So there we are in January getting the 3rd issue with Wonder Man there to save the life of the Vision. Now, the Vision had been wounded in battle in the previous issue, and then this was that page from the 4th and final issue with the reveal that Magneto is the father of Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch, and that Luna, the daughter of Quicksilver and Crystal, Luna is an Inhuman mutant hybrid, which actually, she's a perfectly baseline human. Crystal's Inhuman genes, Quicksilver's mutant genes cancel out, and so Luna ties Magneto to the main human race. And we continue that Claremont-driven face turn for Magneto. And that is
Crystal kind of got around Johnny Storm and Quicksilver and
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, there was that story in the 12-issue miniseries with Norm Tobin, the realtor that she had an affair with.
she had a good time.
So I think these might have been announced at San Diego Comic-Con that year, but certainly I'm going to shoot through the Eagle Awards. Just really, really quickly.
Were those at San Diego at the time?
They might have been.
Okay,
They
go
might
on.
have been. But even if they weren't done there, then I'm sure they would have announced them. But for favorite graphic novel from the Eagles was Nemesis the Warlock. That came from Great Britain. Kevin O'Neill, I believe, is the artist on that one. Favorite story or best story was V for Vendetta, which at that time was being published in Great Britain. This is before the DC reprint. Favorite group book actually was a toss-up between either the New Teen Titans or the X-Men. The X-Men were identified as a favorite group, but the New Teen Titans, and there's annual number 2, which also has the first appearance of the character Lyda, who is Harbinger for Crisis on Infinite Earths.
The Eagle Awards were British.
Oh, they were British, but I felt like they announced the winners at the cons over on this side.
Perhaps.
Favorite writer was Alan Moore that year. Favorite artist was Bill Sienkiewicz. And certainly Bill Sienkiewicz is a favorite one of mine and Kevin's here.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we disagree at all about our passion for the artwork of Bill Sienkiewicz. Even for stories that he's done that I wasn't as wild about the story, I cannot reproach the man for artistic talent. My God, that his use of colors and textures, distorted angles, like everything he does is intentional. So there's definitely never a bad picture. There just might not be a picture that you like as much. Story, which is to say single or continued, would be Alan Moore's Marvel Man. Now, of course, we know this as Miracle Man, but in Great Britain, it was Marvel Man, and such good stuff. And artist, favorite artist was Alan Davis. And you know what? No kidding, Alan Davis. Alan freaking Davis. Captain Britain, man. Alan Davis's Captain Britain's just a wow and amaze me. So there you have it, folks. That I actually managed to get just about all the way through that. The only thing I didn't mention, and I'm just going to throw it in here real quick, was Frank Miller's Ronin. Frank Miller's Ronin #1 dropped that year. And that was our sort of futuristic samurai story. I remember the advertisement that really hooked me before the first issue came out. I saw this ad of a samurai leaping into what looked like just this huge circle of swords, and the text read, "A man who is prepared to die can accomplish anything." I was like, I don't know what this is, but I have to read it now.
Yeah, I picked up a few of those at like a bookstore. I don't think my normal comic place had them, but I picked up a couple of issues of Ronin in a bookstore, much like I did other square-bound items like Lone Wolf and Cub in that or shortly thereafter era. By the way, also beginning in '83 was
Alpha Flight?
Alpha Flight, exactly.
So Alpha Flight, which introduced, it didn't introduce the main characters, although it did introduce us to Marina and Puck, but it also introduced us to the idea of Beta Flight and Gamma Flight. We didn't know who the characters were, but that was our first look at them.
And also botches.
Again, Roger Box, we didn't know his name. We only knew what the robot looked like. But we did get the first of the Great Beasts, that subplot from Snowbird's story.
Yeah.
We also got the New Mutants out of this. We had already gotten their first graphic novel.
And we got the beginnings of them at the very end of 1982 But
here they are with their own book.
with their own book, exactly.
So yeah, they ran pretty close to Alpha Flight around about that time, it was a good time. Now the X-Men are truly becoming a franchise. It's not just the Uncanny X-Men; it's now also the New Mutants, tangentially Alpha Flight, because of their tie to Logan and the X-Men.
And the first appearance of the Morlocks as a team as well.
In the pages of Uncanny X-Men. But also, and this is important, 1983 gave us the first appearance of the woman named Madeline Pryor. Now, we know Madeline Pryor as the Goblin Queen, but there she is, and when she was introduced to us here, she was just a woman named Madeline Pryor who had red hair and might have looked a little bit like Jean Grey, but she wasn't. That was not Chris Claremont's intention, but he was boxed into a corner, and that Goblin Queen clone of Jean Grey story was what we got.
Was she originally meant to be the Goblin Queen, or
Nope.
was no, I didn't
Nope.
think so.
So she was just a woman who bore a superficial resemblance to Jean, and that was going to be how we got Scott out of the book, but it didn't work out that way. And I would be remiss to many of my personal friends if I didn't mention that 1983 was Starslayer number 10, and the character more important than the Log of the Jolly Roger was Grimjack. John Gaunt the Grinner, Grimjack, came out of Starslayer. And after several issues of Starslayer as a backup feature, a crossover with Starslayer himself, not just another pretty face, ladies and gentlemen, John Ostrander and Tim Truman, incidentally, a super nice pair of guys. They gave us this character, and his stories are fantastic. Get those back issues whenever you see them. Just get them. Get whatever you see when you see it.
I liked him when he wore the Civil War jacket, and his scar had moved a little bit.
You're thinking of Jonah Hex.
Same guy. Same guy. Also in games, by the way, just transitioning a bit, a couple of RPGs. James Bond 007, role-playing in Her Majesty's Secret Service, came out in 1983.
Was that Mayfair Games?
I believe so. And also, Victory Games.
Victory Games.
Palladium. The original Palladium fantasy role-playing game came out in 1983. So that's those. But hey, before we go, Troy, we need to, and I'll spare you too much madness. But there were a lot of television shows in America in 1983.
Wow.
Including this one, and I know you can't see this. I'm not shooting video. I'm just shooting audio. Or Auto-io.
Automan.
It's Automan.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I just don't know what I'm going to do with myself. What's up there, Andrew?
Oh, starring Desi Arnaz Jr. Hello. And Chuck Wagner. Oh, Automan was amazing and ran one season. And you can get the Blu-ray set from Shout Factory. Our buddies down at Shout Factory will do you up good, because they bring back anything they can get their hands on, frankly, and it's always a joy. In the realm of jumping over to the realm of cartoons, Troy, you know what was just amazing? Oh, the police are here for us. We're gonna have to speed this up.
Oh my God! It's Inspector Gadget.
Inspector Gadget came along in 1983, and as well as my nickname. Thank you, people in Texas, for calling me. I inherited my Uncle Joe's trench coat, and I would wear it because I was a cool long-haired kid in Texas, so why wouldn't I? Anyway, they call me Inspector Gadget, and that was hilarious. All of you were just stupidly hilarious, or except for those of you who were just stupid. Just saying, there were a few of those too.
Wizards and Warriors.
Wizards and Warriors, also a one season wonder. I think we got about 8 episodes out of this.
Theirs was to be a most unholy alliance.
I would have a most unholy alliance.
Hey.
Wait, what? I have no. Oh, but then they zoom in our face. Wait, let's just move away from this. Anyway, high fantasy and on TV. well before the era of Game of Thrones or even Xena Warrior Princess was that
Well, I mean, could you
debacle.
imagine in 1983 telling home box office that they will one day air original content?
Yeah, they might,
Laugh at my face.
or start it ahead of time. Hey, you know what else was fun?
Oh my God, Manimal!
Oh my God, Manimal! Imagine, Troy, you're a man who can turn into an animal. You're a man, you're an animal, you're a manimal.
You mean like Beast Boy, aka Changeling, in the new Teen Titans?
Right, starring Simon McCorkindale and Melody Anderson.
Wow.
And Mike, this was the psych of 1983.
Oh,
Oh.
just really awful.
And yet it was fine. You know, this is you look at it and you're like, oh, the sci-fi could totally just start this right back up again right today. And turn into a horse and jump over things.
Oh, God.
And crossing the line in between animation and live action, we have this gem of 1983.
Oh my God, no way.
Oh, way.
Oh, Fraggle Rock.
Fraggle Rock, Troy.
Oh.
It's,
Because you can't have too much Jim Henson in your life, right? So
you
you're,
can't.
I mean, there are kids watching Sesame Street. We're watching reruns of The Muppet Show. There's Fraggle Rock. There's movies like Dark Crystal. We would eventually get Labyrinth. I'm like, Jim Henson, what couldn't he do?
I don't know. Cell shaded animation. Maybe you could do that too. I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
you know-
they certainly had a Fraggle Rock.
And don't forget the Muppet Babies.
Oh yeah, I guess he could. Muppet Babies was actually quality. We won't go into that. But anyway, that was fantastic. So that's, you know, we had a bunch of weird things. We had the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Oh my God, that had been running for a little while though.
No, that's when it began. Is 83, season 1 1983, season 2 1984, season 3 1985.
Wow, I thought it had started in like late '82, but maybe not.
Well, according to this. Anyway, and then we also had spinning off of a movie that was quite popular in 1983. We had Whiz Kids. You remember that little Matthew Broderick joint with the shall we play a game, Troy?
War games.
War games.
War games.
Well, Whiz Kids would kind of jumped onto that bandwagon where people making TV shows said, "Hey, what about this technology? We could have a bunch of teenagers who hack things." It was unrealistic, of course, like everything is, all the way up into Volkov, because oh my God, I would like that software, please. Anyway. That's 1983 for you in the realm of geek pop culture. Do we have anything else, Troy?
I don't think so. I mean, we certainly covered a lot, and it just tells me that 1984 is going to be densely packed.
Oh, we're gonna have to get here early next week, Troy.
Oh my God! So yeah, I mean, you guys can already feel free to jump ahead a little bit, and remember your own youth. Remember 1985, 1984, 1985. You want me to shout something out, spotlight something? Y'all know how to reach me. Y'all know the email, the Facebook messages, and certainly reach out to us that way. And we're going to talk all the pop culture of 1984. There's movies, there's video games, there's graphic novels, comics, there's all kinds of music videos on MTV. Things are in a state of flux and change, and the more things stay the same, the more they seem to change. And yes, I did that on purpose. There's a lot coming to us here in America from Great Britain, from Japan, from Germany. There's a lot going on. And and one day even Kevin would be coming over here from the far west coast, from the foreign land that is San Diego.
Right. With a stop in the in Missouri in between.
Missouri.
I was there for 7.5 years, Troy. All right. Well, so join us tomorrow as we talk about our top 5 comics. As per usual, Troy and I do the top 5 out at Flashback, or sometimes at my house. But we'll be there talking about my top 5 most anticipated comics of this week. Those are those that come out on Wednesday, the 26th of June. 2019, and Troy will be talking about some comics that you might ought to catch up on that he has already read.
Yes, indeed. So I think what we're going to do here, Kevin, is as people have said, we need a bigger store. So I think we're just going to expand into your living room.
I'm sure that's fine. I got a lot of comics that I could probably unload. Hey, I've got some Fallen Angels for you from, what year was that? That was 1986?
I think so.
Yeah.
And don't you dare. You hold on to those things.
Rid of those. That's just an example of many of the crappy comics that I have to sell you. Not really. I mean, maybe if you really want them, just let me know. So like us and share us and tweet us and do all the stuffs. We really appreciate it. All the promotion that you can help us out with. We will enjoy. Meet us back here next week for 1984, as we said. And so for Troy. And for everybody here at FXBG Public Radio and everybody at Comics Online and for everything Geek Pop Culture, I'm Kevin Goswan and this is Comics Online.
Swag. Swag. Swag 1,000 times. Swag 1,000 times. Swag 1,000 times.
Expressed in this podcast may not represent those of Comics Online, any participants, or any employers past, present, or future. If you would have thought otherwise without hearing this disclaimer, maybe you're not ready for this whole internet thing, much less Time Lords. Or maybe you're instead one of our smart and sexy fans who appreciate foul language, airplane gremlins, biting sarcasm, and everything geek pop culture. If you have comments or questions for the Comics Online podcasters, post on our Facebook page, tweet us on Twitter, or email us at podcast@comicsonline.com. All original material in this podcast copyright Comics Online.